All right, so here's our untitled version. Just open Maya. This is a new project. Um, the very first thing you'll do is drag your the ball bounce exercise into I don't know. I guess you'll download it and it'll be in your download folder. But once you've downloaded it, I want you to set up a project. So, and this is probably familiar to most of you if because I'm pretty sure you did this in 217. But and we're going to do this with every new assignment. So we have a ball balance assignment. We're going to have a ball balance project. And this is really professional practice, and I'll show you why. So you go to File, Project Window, and then it brings up this window. And you can see all these names: scenes, templates, images. These are all folders that is going to be created for you to manage this project. And this is essentially this system was built off of how it's done in industry. So it's really important to get used to this. The most important folders are your scenes folder. That's where your Maya files exist. I don't really use the assets folder at all. You can, but I just put all my Maya files in scenes folder. The images folder is used when you render. It'll default to render them in this folder. Source images is specifically for for your texture maps. If you have a character with a skin texture, whatever, anything that you need to texture to your characters needs to go in that source images folder, or Maya's not going to find it. Or you may assign it somewhere else. Like sometimes students assign it to images folder, and then when they save it and then open it up again, it's not connected because Maya is going to default it to the source image folder. Sound is where you put your audio, and we can use sound in this class. It's generally used for lip sync. I don't think we're not going to get into lip sync this assignment, but you can add audio to make your animation more interesting. Movies is where I save not just my I guess you can do playblasts as well, and we'll actually do a playblast today, and we'll put it in the movies folder. But I like to put my renderings, my completed Premiere files in this folder so I can find them. But that's just me. But yes, our playblast will go in the movies folder. So again, scenes, images, source images, sound, and movies are the most important ones. So to create so it's just default, and you don't want that. So we're going to hit new. And feel free to do this while we're talking. And if you have any questions, you can stop me. So I'm going to call this ball bounce with no space. And it's really important to get used to this path. You can see it's creating it on my C drive, users. That's my computer name, larger than life. Document. So this is the really important part. Documents, Maya, projects. All of these projects that we're creating are going to reside within this projects folder. So after I've renamed it here, I just say accept. And I'm going to bring up this folder that shows you that path. So here's my documents, Maya, projects, and here's the ball bounce. You can see I created this one today. And here's all the folders we were talking about. And the scenes folder, there's nothing, well, there's this edits folder. I generally do not ever use that. And in the source images folder, you'll see this 3D paint textures. I never use that either. But they're just defaulted to be created in Maya. So what I do need to do, go ahead, I'm sorry, was there a question?
Are you pointing at a folder or anything? Because we can't.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I shared the Maya session instead of my screen. Let me stop sharing for a second and share my screen instead of just Maya. Thank you for pointing that out. Let's see. Share screen. Screen one. That's what I should have done. Okay. So yeah, here's Maya, and then now you can see my folder on top of Maya.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. So has everyone downloaded their from the Google Drive the ball bounce exercise? If you haven't, please go to let me see if I can find it real quick. Actually, I'm going to pause for a second so that we don't catch this on our recording. Google Drive.
Okay. I don't have my computer with me right now. It's
okay.
at home and I haven't had a chance to grab it yet.
Okay. All right, so let me just open this up for everyone to just, again, find their folder. And then you guys can do this on your own time. Oops. Let me back up one. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing again. Resume. Oh, shoot. I stopped sharing, but did I pause my recording? Recording, okay. Anyways, I'm going to resume sharing. So yeah, here's my Google Drive, and this is our class. So you double click in there, and you should have access to all these. But right now we're in the ball bounce. And then at the very bottom, you should see, oh shoot, you're not seeing this either. Let me go over here. There we go. Can you see this Google Drive?
Yes. You must have the two screens.
I've downloaded it, but I'm
Okay.
having trouble getting Maya to open it. But I think that might be because I uninstalled 2022 and installed 2023. So my desktop might just not be recognizing the files as a Maya file. But it's also not allowing me to select it. So I'm fighting with what's probably just my interface. So I'm trying to get it to recognize Maya files again.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any issues with 2023 because yeah, this is an older file, but I installed Maya 2023 on my computer, but it didn't give me any issues. So we'll have to double check and see if there's something else. But yeah, just make sure that if even if you can't do it right now because you don't have Maya or you don't have your computer, just know that this is where the file is going to be: first initial, last name, bounce, and you can just yeah, download it. Click on download, and then it'll drop it in your download folder. Well, I guess I should have saved as first, and I'll just call it what it is, and I'll say save, and then it should, yeah, there it is. So here's my downloads folder and first initial, last name, ball bounce. So what you're going to want to do once you've downloaded it is, let me minimize Maya for a second, bring up a second folder and documents, Maya, projects, ball bounce, and then scenes. You want to make sure to put it in the scenes folder. So I'm just going to cut, Control X, and paste it, Control V, into my scenes folder. So now it's sitting in the correct folder in the right path. And if it's not here, very often students accidentally, without realizing it, put it in the default folder, or Maya automatically saves it in the default folder. So if you can't find your project, most likely it's in the project's default folder, hopefully in scenes. But anyways, yeah, just make sure that you create a project, call it ball bounce. And another thing you need to do in Maya, let me open this up again. So I'm going to say File, Open Scene, and you can see it's already looking for that folder. I'm sorry, for in that folder, the Maya Projects Ball Bounce Scenes folder. So I click on that project, I say Open, and you can see it's in the correct path. And just to double make sure that it's looking in this path, I'm going to go to File and say Set Project. And I learned this the hard way. When you set a project, you don't double click on it. You just select the folder that you want and then hit set. If you double click on it, it's going to go into that folder, and you don't want any of these folders to be your project. You want the ball bounce. So just click, select it. Don't double click on it. And then down here in the directory, it should say ball bounce and then just say set. So this is what you should be looking at if you're able to bring it into Maya. And you'll see that there's only 2 layers in the layers editor. There's the heavy con and the light con. Essentially, these are the same balls. Let's see, it's been a while since I've played with this. Yeah. So if you select there's a triangle at the bottom, this control handle at the bottom, it's called the root con. If you select that, you can, in the channel box, you can see there's ball type, and you can click on that and then choose a different texture for it. It can be simple, basic, checker, football, or football 1, I guess, football 2. You can just go through and select each one of these individually. So if you want a heavy ball, you probably don't want the ball to look like a beach ball, just because you don't want to confuse your audience. So that's why I just assigned the bowling ball. I'm going to change I don't really need my hypergraph right now. And I like to work in a certain layout for animation. So I'm going to change my layout the way it is. I'm going to go up here and say panels, and then layouts. Look through. I'm sorry, panels, layouts, 3 panes, split top. So I like to keep my perspective view in the top left, and then the bottom, this long bottom, I like to make that my graph editor. So I'm going to go to the bottom viewers panel, and then I say look, or I keep saying look through selected. Panels, panel, and then graph editor. So this is where my curves are going to be. And then if I'm animating, I need to create a camera. We don't want to just animate to the perspective view because this is our work area. We want to be able to rotate around. So I'm going to go up to create cameras, and then I'm just going to select the top option because it's super simple. That's all we really need. We don't need an animated camera right now. So in my perspective view, my camera is selected. And in this top right panel, I'm going to go to panels. This time I'm going to select look through selected. And you can see it's actually pointing right down that axis. So that's why you see that line right there. If I pull it back and pull it up, you can see that it's starting to get the balls in view. And maybe I'll rotate it. I'm just going to animate one of these. So I'm going to position it just to focus on one ball. In the past, I would have the students animate a heavy ball, a light ball, and generally those were both rigid. And then I'd have them animate a squishy ball, so you can get a lot of good squash and stretch. For the sake of time, we're not going to go through all 3 of those. In fact, I think for this assignment, it's only one ball. Anyway, so that's my camera that I've set up. And I want to lock it because it's very easy to confuse this, even though this says perspective down here and this says camera 1. Sometimes, I'm doing other things, and I come back and I start moving this around. And then I realize, oh no, I moved my camera that I spent so much time to get correct. So if you accidentally move that camera, it's really simple to get back to your original camera position. Right next to the P on your keyboard, there's a left bracket, and you can hit that. Uh-oh, I hit it in the wrong one. There we go. And if you really, zoomed around, you can use the left bracket to find your camera, or you can use the right bracket to go back and forth. So let's say I found my camera, and actually I don't have any animation on this, but if I had animation, I want to make sure that my camera is in a position where I'm not clipping, In other words, it's not up here. The frame, it's in the frame. Also, if you might remember this from last semester, but if you hit 4, you're in wireframe. If you hit 5, you're in shader mode. If you hit 6, you're in texture mode. And these aren't really textures. They're basically just colored. They just colored the shaders to get these. That's why they appear in 5 and 6. And if you hit 7, you're in lighting mode. And if you don't have any lights, which we don't have, you just see a solid silhouette. And I found that this is actually really useful, especially with a character with arms and legs, to make sure that the silhouette reads properly, so that if my arm is in front of my body, I'll lose my hand, maybe I'll lose my the elbow. And you want to generally keep negative space between those appendages. So I found that hitting 7 on your keyboard when you're posing out your character gives you a nice clean silhouette to animate to. Anyways, so that's the camera. Oh, one thing I was going to say about the camera is you want to lock your camera, and there's 2 different ways to do it. You can lock it up here. And if I have my camera selected, let me unlock it for a second. You can see in the channel box, as I hit that lock selected, it only locks the translates and rotates, which is really what gives it the movement. You can't, scaling the camera, if I hit R, scaling the camera doesn't really change its position. But if you did want to lock all of them, this is how we used to do it. And you can still do this. You can left click and drag through those attributes, right click, and then go to lock selected, and that locks everything. And then when you're ready to unlock, to adjust your camera or whatever, you just right click and say unlock selected. So yeah, you've locked the camera. And then we're going to start animating this. So first of all, I'm going to animate the light ball. So I'm going to turn off the heavy ball, so it's just not a distraction. One thing that I would, let me see. So in the past, so one thing about animation, when you have a simple ball like this, it's not quite as important, but it's a good habit to get into. You want to create a layer that you can see. These are light cons and heavy cons. The con stands for control handles. You want to make sure that all of your control handles are on that layer. I'm actually going to delete this layer and recreate it just so that you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to create a new layer and call it, I'm just going to rename it the same thing I just had it. Light cons underscore LYR. And I hit save. Okay, so if I turn that off and on, you can see nothing's assigned to it yet. I'm actually going to turn it off, and I'm going to select each of these individually, each of these controls individually. And I just tap the space bar to maximize that view. With that root con selected, I right click on it and I say add selected object, and it disappears because it's not visible. I go to the next one. That's the bottom con. Right click and hold. I say add selected. The middle con, which is main con. Right click and hold, add selected. And then the top one, like con, add selected. So I learned a little trick last year. I used to have the students create what's called an all button, which means you go into the script editor and you select all of your controls, and then you middle mouse drag them to a tab. And it's a little bit more involved. With this, it's not that bad because it's just 4 controls. But with a character, a human character that has all the joints of the finger and all the expression joints, and it's just a lot more complicated. And very often it doesn't work. But the reason you want to have these selected, or I'm sorry, added individually as to this layer, is because you can right click on this and say select objects. So everything that's in that layer you can select. And it's a much faster, cleaner way to select all of your controls at once. And if you want to, you can create different controls. You can create a layer just for your facial expressions when you have a more complicated rig. And I'm going to maximize this for a second. And you can see we have our ball top, ball main, root, con, and bottom, and then all the attributes within each one of those controls. So this represents everything that I can animate on this character. And you don't want to animate the ball itself. In fact, this is a good rig because you can see I can't select it. If I could select this rig, I'm sorry, not the rig, but if I could select the mesh, I risk the chance of animating the mesh. And I run into that previously with when I first started teaching. I didn't hide that option for the students to be able to select this, and they would actually start animating the character and then double animating because they didn't realize they also had the rig that did the same thing. So it got really confusing. So with animation, and this is, I'm pretty sure this is consistent with all the softwares. You don't want to animate, you don't ever want to animate your mesh. You only want to animate, and you don't want to animate the joints either, which sounds strange. You pose the joints, but you pose them using the controls. So the controls move the joints and the joints move the mesh, but you don't animate the mesh and you don't animate the joints. You animate these controls. It sounds kind of silly to, I don't know, say it so much, but that's a really important concept to understand. So with all of these selected, so I'm going to go back and say select objects. You can see I've already keyed this at frame 0. It's actually at its point of origin. And then if I hit the greater than sign next to the M, actually it's 2 spaces over from the M, there's the greater than less than. If I just hit those back and forth, Maya is taking me to the next keyed frame. If you hold down Alt, it'll go to every frame or every integer frame. It doesn't want to go to these little fractions here or these decimals, but it'll go to the 2. So I'm holding down Alt and hitting the greater than sign. And you can see as I'm holding down Alt or greater than or less than, it's taking me frame by frame through my animation. If I go down here to 6, let's say I key it at 6. With everything selected, I hit S. And that keys everything at 6. And there's some movement. I didn't really do any position changes, so I'm gonna actually reposition this in the translate Y. Well, before I start moving everything, it's really important to understand what I just did. I keyed everything at 6, but I haven't really started my animation at 6 as far as posing my character. You want to make sure that you don't just move everything at once like this. You can see the rig is starting to break. And the reason everything's moving is because, breaking is because I have everything selected. So there's a difference between keying your character and posing your character. I just keyed everything at 6, but I haven't posed anything really. So that's what I want to do next is pose each individual control. Another thing I need to discuss is make sure that you have this auto keyframe toggle on. It's this little cycle with, it looks like a plus sign in the middle. If you leave that on, that gives you a huge advantage. Every time you reposition your character, it will automatically set keys for that new position. I've done this before, and I know a lot of other animators have. You have this character that you've been working on this beautiful pose with all the way down to the fingers and the facial expressions. And let's say you have that at frame 6, and then you're done with it, and you're gonna hit the next pose is at frame 10. So you just scrub over here to frame 10, and you start animating the next pose. And before you realize it, frame 6 that you spent so much time on is gone because it didn't save it. If you have this auto keyframe toggle turned on, any changes you make will automatically set a key for them. So yeah, just make sure that you have this on so you don't accidentally waste time. Also down here is this little animation preferences, this little guy being chased by a gear. I'm going to go in there, and you want the playback speed to be set to 24 FPS times 1. And you want the update view to be set to all. And when you have it set to all, right now I have 2 windows. If I had 4 windows, you can see as I scrub through this, it updates the position live. If I had it off, let me turn it off and show you. This is, I'll save that. So you can see as I drag through, as I scrub through, I hovered in here first, so it's that perspective view is updating live, but the camera is not. I get there and then it updates. I just like to see everything update at once. So animation preferences, oops, that's not it. Animation preferences, and then changes update view to all. Most likely your undo is already set to on and infinite Q as defaults, but if it's not, just make sure you go to animation preferences, undo on, and Q infinite. And that's important if you're not familiar with that. You know, if you've done, I don't know, 50 different commands in Maya, and you wanted to go back a couple, you wanted to undo stuff. If you don't have this set, you can only go back to a certain number, but this will take you all the way back to when you first opened Maya. So that's really useful. Also, I'm going to go to under settings, I'm going to go to animation. Oh, that's not it. Where is it? Where is it? Cache playback. Yes, cache playback. No, that's not it. I just looked at this last night. Where is it? Snapping. No, tangent. I'm looking for the tangents. Anyways, I'll get back to that when I find it. It's escaping me right now. But we want to be animating to in stepped mode. And I'll explain what that is. So going back to our animation. So I have this ball, and I've keyed a position, but I haven't moved anything. So you can see from going left, greater than and less than, there's no real change in the animation. What I am seeing the change in as I scrub through is my my keys are not set to stepped. So if I select these guys and I hit this step tangents, now if I just drag through from 1 through 6, it's the same value all the way through. Also, the graph editor, it can get kind of small. You know, you can expand it this way. You can tap the spacebar, but then you can't really see your animation. But you can also hold down Alt and use the middle mouse and drag it left and right. You can use Alt and Shift, and I'm holding down the right mouse button, and that question mark is asking me, are you going to drag up or down or left or right? So I'm going to drag up, and you can see by dragging up and down, it expands it in the y-axis. Or if I drag it, holding down Alt and Shift and right mouse dragging left and right, I can expand it in the x-axis. So that way you can customize it to see the graph better for yourself. Okay, so I positioned it at frame 6, and I already know beforehand that for this ball to just sit flat on the ground, tangent the ground, I need to change the Y value of the main control to 0. So I have this main control selected. I mean, I can eyeball it here. Maybe I'll go to the front view for a second, hold down spacebar, go to the front view, and I can eyeball it. But you can see that's, you know, that's pretty close. But what's better is if I look over here at the channel box, translate Y is really close to -3.002. If I just type in a -3 there, then it's sitting right on the ground. And you can see as soon as I did that, the Y value changed. Let me undo that so you can take a look at it. See, right now the value is, translate Y at 6 is 0. As soon as I put a -3 in here at 6, it drops it down here to -3. And you can see that there's a little tick mark. Oh, there was a little tick mark. Where is it? Anyways, so if we just look at the animation now, he's dropping straight down. So this assignment, and I wish you guys could get to the rubric, but this assignment is basically to have this ball drop and bounce from left to right in a believable way. You can either make it a heavy ball or a light ball, but you want it to be believable. And so much of animation is not about making it necessarily realistic, but making it believable. My favorite example of believability is Wile E. Coyote cartoons. You know, Wile E. Coyote, the Roadrunner always seemed to trick him off of a cliff. And the coyote, he's just kind of standing there midair. And then he realizes, oh, wait a minute, I'm not standing on any ground. And then he starts to fall. His feet fall first, his legs and his arms and his head. And he says goodbye. And then his sign follows. And we see him falling and falling and falling and falling. And he's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And you have this great sound effects of a whistle. And then you see this poof of smoke. That's not realistic to our physics. I mean, we don't fall, you know, we don't have that kind of hang time, but it's believable in this cartoony world. So you don't necessarily have to follow accurate, you know, earthly physics, but you want to make it believable for the world that you're creating so that your audience isn't taken out of this world because it doesn't look right to them. And even if someone doesn't understand, you know, they haven't taken physics, and they don't have to take physics. They're human beings that live on Earth, and they get the feeling of what looks right and wrong with gravity. So think about physics, but make it believable. So it's falling forward. So I need to drag it forward in the Z-axis. So the Z-axis is always the blue one. X is red and Y is green. So I grab the Z-axis and I'm going to drag it forward a little bit. And I can see that my camera is not in a very good position because it's already clipping through. So I'm going to select my camera and I'm going to reposition it. So I have to unlock it. And I'm going to zoom out. Oops, sorry. Grab my camera, hold Alt, and I'm going to just drag out so that I can make sure that it's positioned to stay in frame. And that's too close to the edge, so I'm going to drag it right there. I don't want it tangenting any edges. All right, and now I want to make sure that it doesn't go too far forward either. So that's a better camera. I've moved my camera, I've adjusted it, now I'm going to lock it again. And I'm going to go back to selecting this guy, and he goes from 1 to 6. And let's say at 6, actually, I'm going to change this. It's going to be a light ball, but I don't want it to look like a beach ball because that's kind of squishy. And I'm not going to focus so much on squash and stretch for this assignment. So I'm going to change it from a beach ball to something that's a little less. So I don't know. I'll just say a checker ball. That's not really specific. It doesn't necessarily have to be rigid or squishy, but this checker ball doesn't make me think of something that's going to squash and stretch. It's a little bit more neutral. Oh, another thing, obviously I started at frame 1 as a squishy ball or as a beach ball, and then at frame 6, checker. And the reason that changed is because I had this auto keyframe toggle on, that's what it's supposed to do. But I have to go down now and make sure that I go in the visibility or the ball type. You can see that it dropped. This value, I'm going to make this value the same at 6 as I'm sorry, at 1 as I have it at 6. So I can select this in the graph editor, and I can see that its value is 2. So over here at frame 1, the value is 10. So I'm just going to change that value to 2. And now it should, there we go. So at 0, it's still the beach ball. And then at 1 forward, it's the checker box. If I wanted all of them, I just change all their values to 2. And I don't really want to see frame 0. That's my safety frame. So I'm going to change, at the very bottom of the timeline, I'm going to change this value to 1. And now I'm not going to see frame 0. And also, I'm not going to animate all the way out here to 100. So I'll say I'm going to stop around 40. So I'm going to change this big value to 40. And now I'm just going to see frame 1 to 40. All right, so as far as animating this, let's say at frame, and also make sure that you're animating the main control. You're positioning forward, up and down, you're animating the main control. So at frame 6, he's going to get down. So at frame 7, he's going to be up. I'm sorry, I did that wrong. I need to go to the next frame. So at frame, I don't know, let's say at frame 10, he's going to go up and over. And I want to make sure I'm not as high as I was to start with. So you can see that this is in the same position as when we started. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit. So frame 10 is, the Y is now at, I don't know, some 1.6, negative 1.6 is okay. It's not as high. In fact, I'm going to look at this from the right view. That way I can see the movement. And at frame, let's see, 4. So from 6 to 10 is 4. So 10 plus 4 is 14. I'm going to drag it forward a little bit and then back down to -3 and then translate Y. And I'm using -3 consistently because that's going to get it back to the ground plane. So it actually touches the ground plane. A lot of what I did at Real Effects as a cleanup artist was I had to go through the senior animator's work and make sure the foot was actually contacting the ground. It wasn't pushed too far into the ground, so it looked like it was stuck in mud, and it wasn't hovering just above the ground, so it created a shadow. And I'm gonna put this back to step for now. So let's see what our animation looks like so far. Oh, I'm looking in the wrong view. I'm gonna go to the left view instead. There we go. $14 goes backwards. So I went the wrong way. I was confused. So I'm going to grab the ball at frame 14 in the Z-axis and drag it forward. That's better. Now, if I look at the translate Z, this is pretty much going to be a straight line. And I'll do a little bit of cleanup in a second, but so it goes up, down at 14. Let's say at 16, he's losing energy. So at 16, he's not going to go as high or as far forward. And then at 17 is the same thing. I'm sorry, not 17, 18. He's going to go forward, but not as much. And then he's going to be back at -3. And maybe we'll just add a couple here. We'll do some vibrations, but that's our movement for now. And if I just hit play, we'll see what it looks like. That's certainly not a beautiful animation. There's several things I need to clean up on. What would you guys recommend? How can I make this even better? Aside from making it smooth animation as opposed to stepped, what do you guys feel about timing?
As the ball loses energy with each bounce, it's going to start to slow with each consecutive movement.
That's right. Good. So I'm going to go back here to translate Y for a second. Actually, I'm going to go back to my all button for a second and say all select objects. And I'm just going to select everything and hit stepped. And this assignment, you can pretty much do this assignment in Spline, but I want you guys to see the process of animating from stepped, because when you get into a more involved character with a lot more complications with all these finger joints and shoulders and facial expressions, it's really important to start simple and get your key poses working really well for you. So my key poses are frame 1, basically the ups, the top positions, the ups and the downs. So frame 1, frame 6, frame 10, frame 14, frame 16, frame 18. Maybe I could spread these out a little bit more as far as timing. So they take a little bit longer. Maybe this happens a little bit too fast. So I use 2 frames to get from 14 to 16. So I have everything selected, and this is really important about working in the graph editor. When you're going to adjust timing, especially with your keys, these are my key poses. I'm going to make sure that I have everything selected like I just showed you. All of my controls, even this guy that I'm not really using, I haven't really animated it, but I just want to select everything and say select objects. And then I'm going to select the stuff that I want to move forward. I just want to make this a little bit slower. Right now it takes 2 frames to get there. Maybe I just want to add 1 more frame. And it's really important to understand if it takes 3 frames to get up, it has to take 3 frames to get back down. If it's 2 frames, you have an imbalance in your timing and it doesn't look right. So I'm going to drag that last frame 1 frame late. And I made an adjustment, so I'm going to hit stepped. And maybe just adding 1 frame is, you may not notice a big difference, but the more you do this, you'll get a better feel for what looks right. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to say that that's decent, just so I can get to show you how to spline before the end of class. Because yeah, this is not an A assignment so far. So this is a rigid ball, which means as soon as it contacts the ground, it's going to pop right up again. If it was a squishy ball, it would squash and stay on the ground a few frames and then stretch out of that. But I'm just going to use a rigid one for now for the sake of time. And I'm going to change my select my main control, go to my translate Y, and where it hits the ground, I want these to be linear tangents, which is this button right here. The up ones, I'm going to select these up ones. I want all of my ups to be flat tangents. This one right here. And this last one, actually, I need to make this one also linear. All my contact positions are going to be linear, and all my up positions are going to be flat tangents. So now if I play it again, the graph looks really nice, but you can see that my animation is it's starting to look good in the Y, but I haven't done this to the Z axis. So I'm going to select the Z axis. And because it's not sitting on the ground at any point, it only stays for a single frame when it contacts the ground. I'm basically going to have a straight line. So from frame 1 to frame 20, I can pretty much delete all these frames and make frame 1 linear. Oops, and make frame 20 also linear. So now if we watch it, let me zoom out a little bit so you can see I don't need the outliner right now. Give me a little bit more space. If I play it, how does that look? Is that better? So what else can we do to this to make it even better, to make it more believable? What do you guys think? I've only animated to 20, so I can probably still go another 20 frames to really polish it, right? For one thing, it's not just going to come to a complete stop at 20. It's probably going to continue moving forward. And in talking about that, well, let me actually get it to the final frame where it's going to stop. So let's say it's going to still do a couple bounces. I'm going to, at 22, I'll drag it up and over. 24, I'll drag it over and down. And I'm going to adjust my animation to the rest of the stuff too. I'll just do this a couple more times. I'll do it at 25. Maybe it's really starting to slow down here. And it's barely leaving the ground. 26, back down. And you can see my straight line is no longer straight. It's got some bumps in it. So I'm going to clean that up in a second. I just want to see what that looks like. That's getting better.
Something I wonder about too, and it might just be something done later in the animation, but when a ball bounces, it's not always going to be facing straight up and down. The sphere is going to rotate as it's bouncing.
Good. I was hoping someone was going to say that. Good. So let me fix this first. So I have I've animated to 26, and even though I've keyed these frames and I thought that they were good, I want everyone to get comfortable deleting stuff that you thought was good, because as you're animating, especially with what the tools that you have in Maya with the graph editor and these spline tools, you're constantly adjusting. You're getting stuff better all the time. And sometimes it's just a matter of deleting stuff that worked at one time and now you don't need it anymore, so you can delete it. So these frames here that were working for me before, they're not working for me anymore. So I'm just going to select those and delete them. And again, set this last frame to linear. And who was that? Adeline that said that? About the rotation?
Yeah, sometimes
good.
Being quiet isn't my forte.
No, that's good. I want everyone to feel comfortable, because I really want you to share what your thoughts are, because the more we do that, the better you're going to become as an animator. So Adeline's exactly right. So if I just play this, what we have so far, it's getting better and better. But I do notice, yeah, the obvious thing is that this ball, especially with a checker texture or shader, we expect it to be rotating. So let's go to the rotation. And if I hit E on my keyboard, from the front view, or I'm sorry, not the front view, the left view, you can see that we're going to be rotating around this red axis, and red is always X. So if I select a rotate X axis, I don't have anything keyed on that yet. So I'm going to go down to frame 26. And, you can add, so I did key that back here at frame 6. I'll just hit S just to make it simple. I'm not going to keep this value here at 6 because that's at 0. So I'm going to delete that. And kind of like I was doing with the translate Z, I'm going to take this new frame 26 where it should be rotating. So if it rotates 360 degrees, it's going to completely make a full circle all the way around. So I'll start with that. I'll say rotate X. I'm just going to, rotate X. I'm going to say 360 in there. And it doesn't look like it changed. But you'll see in the graph editor, where is it? Let me move this out of the way. Yeah, you can see it jumped way up here. So because it's step tangent right now, there's no rotation until you get to the very last frame, and then it pops, and you don't see it pop because it's just 2 colors. But what I'm going to do is select these 2 guys and turn them into linear tangents. And now you can see it rotating. So if we just watch that, How's that? Is that looking more believable?
Yes.
Good. So that's getting there. But again, a ball's not just going to come to a complete stop unless something actually stops it. Maybe there's a magnet under there that actually holds it perfectly in place so it doesn't. But even with a magnet, there's going to be a little bit of jostling, a little bit of settle down because of momentum, because of the inertia that it's already created from falling and moving forward. So the last thing that I would do is add a couple frames of settle down. So my last frame was at 26. So maybe I'll do it at 28. And I may adjust this, but I'm just going to say at 28, I'm going to roll it. Actually, before I roll it, I'm going to move it in the Z-axis forward a little bit. And then I'm going to rotate it also in that direction. And, you know, there is a formula, if you really wanted to get scientific about it, the ratio of rotation to translation. One of my students, the student I was telling you about that got me sick because he was so excited about coming to class every day, he actually used that formula. He found this formula online and he used it. And I don't have any problem with that, except that you want to be careful that your animation doesn't become too scientific. There's a big difference. And I worked at, I went to school at Carnegie Mellon also, and I worked in their motion capture lab. And there's a problem with motion capture. It can look believable, but often when you get to the face, you start losing believability because they're missing a really important concept in animation, which is exaggeration. And if you just do it straight, just perfectly straight, and a lot of video games do that, the animation really isn't very good. And that's really one of the important concepts that Disney discovered, his animators discovered, was this idea of exaggeration. You don't just animate to life, you make life a little bit bigger, a little bit happier, a little bit sadder. And that gives you, that accentuates for the audience, and that makes it more convincing. Anyways, so you can see it's rolling and then it slides a little bit. We don't really want it to slide and we don't want it to skid. So maybe 2 frames later, I'm going to have it go back to its original position. And I could just kind of eyeball it, but I'm going to cheat. I am going to select my all button. And what I have at 26, I'm actually going to change this for a second and put it back in stepped. And now 26 and 27 have the exact same values. I'm going to hit S to key it at 27. And I'm just going to steal that. So I make a marquee around what I have at 27. I'm going to hold down Shift and middle mouse drag over to 30. So now I'm going to go back to just my main control. And this is rotation. So I'll set that back to, I don't know, flat tangent. No, not flat, sorry, linear. And then rotate Z, or sorry, translate Z. It's gonna, this is 28 is now my new end position. 29 is settling back into that position. Or I'm sorry, 26 is the end position. 28 rolls a little bit past that, and then it's gonna go back. So I'm going to, let's see what linear does, if that looks okay. And then maybe up here, I think I'll leave that one as flat. And then let's see what the Y does. There's really no change in Y because it's just rolling at this point. It's not gaining any Y values. All right, so let's see what that looks like. I'm gonna hit back to the beginning and hit play. I mean, that's better. but still it comes to abruptly to, it rolls forward a little bit and then comes back, but it still is not finished. It's not quite polished. So I would roll it forward, roll it back, and I'm gonna go back to my all button. So there's something in animation that's called favoring. And I learned this at Real Effects. I didn't learn it in school, I learned it in Real Effects. So there's only one frame between these two positions, here and here and here and here. I stopped it at, oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute. Let me just grab my main control. There we go. 26, there's one frame there. Oh, I'm sorry, there's two frames. If I wanted to play with a little bit of in-between animation, I'm just gonna select this for a second. Actually, I wanna select this side. Yeah, I'm gonna go to 27 for a second. And I'm gonna grab what I have afterwards, hold down Shift and drag it out farther. And that's gonna give me more values to play with. So let's say it settles down and then it comes back, but I wanna steal one of these values for it to settle the other direction. So let's say I'm gonna key it at 30. Then I select that, hold down Shift and drag it. Oops, sorry. One thing about dragging in the graph editor, you want to make sure that you're very clear about dragging left or right and not up and down, because it'll mess up your rig. So hold down Shift, middle mouse drag it to the right, and I'll put it right there. Now with those changed, I'm going to drag these back to their original positions. Because yeah, 28. And maybe that's not subtle enough. So I'm gonna key it at 31 and maybe delete 30 and then maybe change 31 to 32. And it's just slowly settling down. And I can just keep doing that until it just settles down really nicely. If you have a really solid object like an anvil and a ball, and there's YouTube videos that if you drop like a marble on it, it just seems like it infinitely vibrates. You just see this until it's really interesting to watch. But for the sake of time, I want to make sure to get to a play blast. So let's just say this is beautiful work. Well, actually, let's not say this is beautiful work. Let's just say I ran out of time and this is C work. And I need to make sure to turn it in because it's Wednesday night and I want to make sure to have something turned in for critique. So I have this animation. Let's actually look at my camera again. Oh, it's out of frame. So I got to make sure to go back to my camera view, unlock my camera, and I'm going to zoom out enough to make sure that it stays in frame. Yeah, and let's say this ground plane, this grid is actually my ground, so it just fell off the ground. If I wanted to adjust so that it stays on the ground just before the edge, I've been moving it in the Z-axis. So I'm going to take all my Z values and I'm just going to, I'll leave my safety frame there, but I'm going to take the other ones 1 through whatever I got to, 32. I'm going to hold down Shift and middle mouse drag them down. And that's going to push it back. So now if I play it, now it stays on the ground plane. I've moved my camera, I've moved my ball out of frame again, but at least it's staying on the ground. Maybe I'll move it up just a little bit. That's pretty good. And then maybe I'll just adjust my camera one more time. Go back to frame 1. I don't know, something like that. I'll just play it to make sure. Okay. So let's say I'm not necessarily happy with that, but I just want to get it in so I can get feedback from it and then make changes to the revision. I just need to turn it in on time. So to make a play blast, first of all, you'll see that my camera view does not have my NURBS curves on. So one of the first things you want to do when you're getting ready to play blast is make sure you turn off, you go to show, and then generally what I do is I say none. That turns everything off, because more complicated rigs have a lot more stuff that needs to be turned off. But what you really just want to have turned on is your polygons. With, I don't know, some character rigs, maybe their eyes or NURBS, but for the most part, your geometry is going to be polygons. So turn on polygons, and that's about it. The other thing is, you see, I have my frame count is turned on. As I slide through here, it changes from 1 to 17 to 29 to all the way to 40. This is going to be important for you, especially with longer animations, because this is going to give you a reference so that when your instructor or your supervising animator gives you feedback, they can tell you from frame, I don't know, from frame 6 to 10, the animation needs to change. That, it just gives a point of reference. So to do that, to turn that on, you go to display, heads up display, and then it's current frame. I just turned it off. Heads up display, current frame. I just turned it on. I don't have my view axis on. This is off and on. I just like to turn it off just to keep it clean. I do like to have the camera turned on, because very often I'll have multiple cameras that I'm working, and I want to make sure that I'm in the correct camera, especially for more complicated scenes. So if I hit play, it looks good so far. So now I'm ready to play blast. So when you play blast, you right click and hold anywhere along the timeline, and you'll see this menu come up. And the very last option is play blast. And then you go to the options box, and you have this window that pops up. You can go ahead and leave view, show ornaments. But the important thing is you really want to make sure that your format is set to QuickTime, not AVI. AVIs make huge files, unnecessarily big. They're not efficient at all. And we all have a finite amount of space on our computers. So QuickTime is a much better compressor. And then for actually compressing it, you want to go to the encoder and use H.264. There's others, but pretty much H.264 is a standard that everyone's using. And then I want my students to use quality at 100%, scale at 1, frame padding is 4, at 4 is fine. And then make sure you save to file. You have this save to file checked. And then you're going to select your name. Of course, you're going to type in your name if it doesn't automatically pop up. Oh, one thing I forgot to do. I should have done this from the beginning. I'm actually working, well, I forgot to do a couple of things. One is I haven't saved any of my work. So I'm actually going to cancel this for a second and save file, save scene as, because I don't want to lose all this work. I could have had a Maya crash and would have lost it all. So when I save it, I want to immediately change this first initial last name to my actual B Rosales _ ball bounce 01. And now this belongs to me. It doesn't have just the default positions and everything. Save as. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to go back to Play Blast, and everything else is set. So I'm just going to highlight this, Control C. I'm going to go to Browse. And again, it immediately, just to remind you of the path, Maya Projects Ball Bounce, it automatically defaults it to the movies folder. I didn't do that. That's what Maya is expected. That's what it's programmed to do. So get in the habit of making sure that you set up your folders correctly so that it'll automatically drop your Play Blast in the movies folder. I hit Control V down here in the file name. I save it. And then before I hit Play Blast, there's one more thing I wanted to show you. And I just recently learned this. If you hold down Control and tap the spacebar once, it maximizes your Maya session view so that your Play Blast is even bigger. And then I hit Play Blast, and it'll take a couple seconds just to process through the movement. All right, so there's my animation. And then it automatically opened it in QuickTime. I like to hit the 3 buttons and hit repeat so I can watch it looping. I also like to just drag through and scrub. Sometimes there's a little detail that I notice I need to go back and forth on and study it. So QuickTime is really useful for that. But that's essentially QuickTime. And then, or I'm sorry, playblasting. So once I've done that, I'm back in Maya, but I have to hit Control Spacebar again to get my views. The other thing I want to do, now that I've saved that in the movies folder, the last thing I'm gonna do is go to, let's see if I can find it real quick. I have my Google Drive. I need to open that, and I'm gonna drop this into that Google Drive folder. Let's see, so here is my Google Drive, and I might have deleted it from this class. Yeah, I created one, I think, in the other class. Anyways, let's just say my name is, I'll just make my own folder in case I need to for demonstration purposes. B. Rosales, create. And then I double click in there and there's nothing in there. So I'm gonna go to my documents, Maya, projects, ball bounce, and movies. So I'm just gonna, oh, it didn't save it in the right folder. Let's see. I thought it saved it in the, I'm not gonna re-save it. I'm just gonna look at where it is. Let's see, Maya projects, ball bounce. Well, it did save it there, but for some reason it didn't change. It didn't change the name. So before I drop it into my Google Drive, I'm going to change the name here. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I'm just going to right click and say rename. Where is it? There we go. I'm going to take out this first initial last name and replace with my first initial last name. There we go. Now with it properly saved, I'm going to go to the ball bounce folder. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong folder. This one. And about naming conventions, it may seem silly to name it B. Rosales ball bounce, underscore ball bounce underscore 01, but I want you to get in the habit of following protocol with naming, because it may not be quite as important in class, but it's extremely important in industry. If you don't name things properly, you end up wasting a lot of company time looking for your projects in the wrong folders or under the wrong name. Very often what they'll do, because they're getting so many different files from different animators, they'll just type in this script that looks for first initial underscore, project underscore 01. And if it's not named like that, if you miss an underscore, or if you just missed it, the script isn't going to find it, and then they have to go look for it. So just get in the habit of following naming convention protocols. All right, so with this saved, I'm not just going to, well, actually, I should just be able to drag and drop. So I grab it and just drag it over here, and it's not going to cut it. It's just going to copy it. So you can see now it exists in my my Google Drive, and this is what I'll open up, and this is what I'll grade. So does anyone have any questions about working in Maya? I know I covered a lot of stuff right now. Does anyone have any questions?
I've never ever touched the rigging section of Maya at all.
Yeah.
Do you recommend any like Maya for Dummies tutorials for that part?
Yeah.
I tried my best to follow, but I
understand.
At a certain point.
I actually hate listening to lectures because I'm trying to do what they're doing at the same time. It's so frustrating. So what I try to do as much as possible, and I did it for this class, unfortunately, Canvas isn't working right now, but I made a bunch of videos that you could have watched beforehand, so that for class, ideally, you would have watched the videos ahead of class and come up with questions, and then during class, you could actually be doing it with me. But that's neither here nor there. In the meantime, until we get Canvas up and you can watch my videos, if one more thing, like I said in the beginning, my office hours are changing. normally I want to have office hours, especially for this class, right after class, unless you have some other schedule conflict. You can just stay on with me and I'll answer your questions. But I have a meeting. There's a faculty meeting right after this class, so I can't do that right now. But if you want to just shoot me an email with a time that works for you. I do have a class from 4 to 6:45. But other than that, I'm pretty flexible today. And yeah, I can walk you through if you need some handholding. I totally understand that. I want everyone to feel like they can ask whatever questions they need to get comfortable with Maya, whether it's rigging or animation or the graph editor or whatever.
Okay, the after class time slot as the class goes on should work fine because
Okay.
I don't like you. I don't have another class till 4 today, so that works.
Okay.
After class, if there's something that I don't understand, I can just hang back and ask.
Yeah. I'm thinking my meeting might be over by 12:30. I'm not really sure. But if you want to just shoot me an email reminder that you want to meet with me at 12:30, and I'll check with our meeting and see if it will be over at 12:30. I'll just send you a confirmation, or if not, I'll let you know that maybe we need to meet at 1 or something else.
Today I won't be able to because work
Okay.
screwed up my schedule and scheduled me over some of my classes this week.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
after this, I have to go deal with work and try to fix that. So I probably won't be back till my next class.
Okay. No problem. Another thing is, and I don't know if I should make this available, but I'm teaching the exact same section at 4 o'clock. So if you have the time, and if you needed to see something again, or even if you wanted to ask questions, I wouldn't, as long as you're not distracting my other students. If you wanted to ask another question about the same topic, because it's all the same assignments, I wouldn't mind if you guys jumped into my section D class, or if they jumped into this class. I want to make myself as available as possible for students, as long as it has to do with the classwork, and it's not distracting. I don't have a problem with that. And it's the same Zoom. It's the same Zoom meeting. You guys are sharing the same Zoom meeting as they are, so you can just jump in. Just let me know that you're there.
I do have a question. Will
Yeah.
the videos be like posted on Canvas? Because I find it for myself, and I'm pretty sure other people find it easy or like helpful to like go back on the lecture and like pause and like rewatch certain parts over and over again.
Yes. So generally, I post the recordings right after class on the announcements page. And I'll try to do that today also. I don't think I should have an issue doing it during, because it's a Zoom meeting anyway, so I should be able to let it process while I'm in the Zoom meeting. Oh, you know what though? No, because I still have to end this session before it'll start processing. So yeah, I'll try to have this up within a few hours after class. Any other questions?
So you said there's videos on Canvas that we can watch before class.
Yeah.
If they weren't working, could we like have like another in the Google Drive of the videos?
Yeah. Well, what I do is generally I'll send you links, because they're all on YouTube. I'll send you links to my channel, and because they're kind of big. Especially like some of them, I try not to make them bigger, but some of them are 30 minutes long, and I don't want to bog down the Google Drive with those. So I'd rather just send a link, and that should, let me know if the links work or not, but I'll try to just send out those links today, as well as download this video recording.
So for the Canvas, there's dates on it, and we were told that it's not updated to you yet. The date's still accurate. Like, oh, the 14th is when the ball's due, even though it says like Wednesday or something. It's supposed to be a Tuesday. But
yeah, that's a good point. So, and thank you for that. I forgot to mention the ball bounce assignment is due. It's not final turn in grade done. Like I said, we're going to do revisions. We're going to have feedback, critiques. But the assignment, the first critique is going to be next Thursday morning. So make sure that if you need to get with me about any questions, you get to me before then. What was that?
So not in 2 days, in like
the next
like
week Thursday.
The next
it's week. Not the coming Thursday.
No, I think it is this Thursday.
This Thursday? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Thursday. Okay, not okay. This coming Thursday is
So
Yeah, it should be the 8th.
all right, and that's when it's critique.
Yeah, that'll be our first critique. And again, if you have some issues, you know, I totally understand that. We'll get through those, especially if you haven't touched Maya in a while. But yeah, just make sure you have something turned in. I want to see that you've actually played with Maya. You've tried to create a play blast, and I'll help you get through it all.
When is it final of it due then?
I have to look at the
Okay, so on
page.
Twitter, it says the 14th. Is that still accurate?
No, from what I've been told, what you are able to see on Canvas is not my updates, because I changed all that information out to show my Canvas, but apparently it's still showing Mel's Canvas from last time she taught it.
Okay.
So I'll just work with you. We'll get through this Canvas situation, but in the meantime, I'll just let you know when things are due. And if I forget,
weird.
Please remind me. Yeah, I don't know why it's
showing
not working.
2022 now, and it's showing you on the home page, but
Good.
the announcements are all Mel's old announcements.
Yeah, because I deleted I think all but like 2 of them. I don't know why I didn't update. So I'll check through that. There's still some glitches that I need to get through. But
It
yeah,
might just be slow to refresh it too. Could be.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And I'll say one thing, this version of Canvas, I mean, I haven't used Canvas in over a year, but I see that they made a lot of changes, and I can see that those changes are supposed to be good, but I think there's glitches that they need to fix. But yeah, it's not the same Canvas that I was in last time. So hopefully we'll get through it all one way or another. I mean, even if I'm just sending you emails with information, and you know, we've had issues with Canvas before, so we'll get it. We'll figure it out.
And can you find out for us if that winter subscription thing can be shared?
Yes, I'll ask in our meeting today. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any last things? All right, well, I look forward to seeing all your great work and teaching you as much as I know about animation and Maya, and I hope you guys have a great day.
Bye.
All right, see you later. See you Thursday.